BC leadership vote is now just days away. With us to help set the stage, Thomson, columnist for the Edmonton Journal. Wlliams is a political scientist at Mount Royal University and, of course, public opinion consultant Janet Brown joining us as well. All right, we have so much to talk about. Let's start with the latest candidate controversy, that being the revelation Thomas Lukaszik's daughter flew with him on government aircraft 7 times. Lukaszik quietly and voluntarily repaid $1,400 last month following the AG's investigation into former Premier Redford's travel expenses. Graham, I read your column on a regular basis, so I know for a fact that you sat down over coffee with Thomas Lukaszik on Monday. We talked last week about the $20,000 cell phone bill. Add that on now to the controversy surrounding flying his daughter. Where's that leave Thomas Lukaszik?
It makes things more interesting in terms of the public maybe starting to get engaged a bit more in this leadership race, because there's actually a few issues here people can actually appreciate, as opposed to sort of the fuzzy issues they were discussing over the summer. So it does maybe focus people's attention on it. I think with Lukaszik, he's saying basically he's being targeted unfairly. These sucker punches are coming at him, leaks to the media that make him look bad. On the one hand, yeah, that's politics though, and he has a record. Like, these things weren't made up. These things are just being leaked to the media to actually investigate. This is a person who's been campaigning on being against the culture of entitlement, but yet he's been spending taxpayers' dollars. He's been a member of the government for 13 years. So I think this is a problem for Lukaszik. Having said all that, the leaks, though, show perhaps this race isn't as clear-cut as we first thought. That, we kept thinking Jim Prentice was going to be the front runner and he'll win on the first ballot very clearly. The sense that maybe people are in the campaigns are worried about other people in the campaigns, that in the race, that may be an indication the race might not be as clear-cut as we think.
Laurie, this latest controversy to shroud the Lukaszik campaign, does it warrant accusations of hypocrisy? He has been standing on this culture of entitlement kick.
Well, clearly it does. I mean, he on the one hand has argued that the expenditures by Premier Redford were absolutely inappropriate. He's now calling for the Auditor General to look into all cabinet ministers' expenditures, I guess hoping that somebody else will get caught in the net that he's been caught in. But it doesn't look good. And you combine that with his very combative style, his 13 years, as Graham said, in cabinet, in government. He's a person who's made a lot of enemies, I think, along the way, and so I mean, it's not clear exactly who leaked this information or why, but it might be people who don't want him to win because they don't think he'll be a good premier, because they're mad at him because of things he's done in the past, or it might be just somebody who's concerned that he won't make a very good leader. And that's, I think, the real question here is how he handles this, how he deals with all of this, I think will help voters get a better sense of who Lukaszik is and whether they want him to be premier or not. And frankly, I don't think he's looking very good.
So, Janet, does this say then that the other two campaigns are concerned about the challenge that Thomas Lukaszik is putting forward?
Well, it's interesting because, really when this race started, Lukaszik was seen as, in a distant third place for the race. One candidate was seen as far ahead, one in the middle, and Lukaszik way at the back. But I think one of the reasons that there is so much heat on Thomas Lukaszik is because he has performed a lot better than people expected. I think the other campaigns are getting the sense that he's getting support beyond just a limited base in Edmonton. He had a couple of really good performances at the debates, although they weren't widely televised. So, I think it was... I look back and I think, this is the point in the race. I thought everybody would be wondering whether Thomas should be dropping out and throwing to everybody else. So absolutely, I think that all this controversy is coming out really is there because somebody is threatened by Thomas Lukaszik. If he was just a throwaway campaign, you'd ignore these things because these things make the whole party look bad, not just Thomas Lukaszik. But, somebody out there doesn't think they can ignore Thomas Lukaszik.
Graham, you mentioned typical campaign politics in your first responses, but is there an undercurrent here that has yet to hit the radar?
Well, there's a real nastiness coming out at the end in this campaign. We haven't really seen in previous campaigns. I know that at the end of the campaigns, people get a bit more desperate. They start throwing a bit more mud I think this one's been interesting in terms of how this is coming forward. Leaks to the media about Wlliams in particular. And there's an issue here about, is there a criminal angle here in this leak to the media regarding the $20,000 phone bill? So that there's weird things going on in this race at the very end. It does not make the party look good. This isn't just people getting more animated and more colorful in the last few days. This is actually, there's an undercurrent here of nastiness and dirty tricks that we don't normally see in leadership races in Alberta.
Laurie, we talk lots about Thomas Lukaszuk. Of course, we talk lots about Prentice. But at this stage of the race, where does this leave Rick McIver?
Well, in terms of poor expenditures or questionable expenditures, Rick McIver is personally looking better than the other candidates. According to the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, they haven't been able to find anything on him. That's to the good for Rick McIver. On the negative side, however, is this whole claim on his part that he nixed the Sky Palace. Well, now we have meeting rooms instead of bedrooms, apparently, and nothing was said about this until after Alison Redford's resignation in the Auditor General's report. So I think Rick McIver is looking for something that's going to make him look better, and the fact that nobody's found anything particularly negative about his own personal expenditures puts him in a little bit of a better position. But I agree with Graham. I mean, this is really bad for the party, and I think you gotta wonder why they would want to lead a party that has got so many things wrong with it.
All right, Janet, the big question, is this week's vote going to be the one and only?
Oh, I don't know. As a pollster, I mean, I want to make a prediction because that's what I do for a living. But the problem is to predict this race, you have to sort of have a sense of who's going to vote. And at this point, I'm just not sure who's going to vote. We're hearing that membership sales are very poor and very low. We're also hearing about all of this controversy around the whole process of voting and faults within the voting system. So, you know, it's just really hard to say. It's going to depend on how many people turn out to vote and what the bent of those people are. If it's that group that I call the Tory industrial complex, those people whose success and wealth and depends on the continuation of the PC dynasty, then I think we're probably going to see Jim Prentice win on the first ballot. But if that Tory industrial complex has shrunken to such a great degree, and it really is a whole bunch of outsiders who really are looking for some sort of massive change, then I don't think it'll be done in the first ballot. I think it'll go to a second ballot.
Give you last word on this one, Graham. Is the Prentice win a foregone conclusion still?
Well, you know, I agree with Janet. I thought originally it would be absolutely for sure he'd win on the first ballot. But it's hard to gauge who's actually going to vote, as Janet said. So I still think it's going to be him on the first ballot, but I'm not so sure as I was before. Another issue for the party is the number of people who come out to vote, even if Prentice does win. But they only get, 25,000 people voting in this race. This looks really bad for the party. When they've had over 100,000 people voting in previous races, only 3 candidates this time having a hard time selling memberships. Jim Prentice is giving them away. So I think that if there's a very low turnout on Saturday, even if Prentice was to win the leadership first ballot, it may look really bad for the party and for him if he's got a very, very small mandate.
All right, time for a break. Up next, capitalizing on the plight of the PCs. Are the opposition parties taking full advantage of the opportunity? More from our politics panel after the break.